So in the recent installments in Cod Zombies, during the main Easter egg or at the climax of it, we've been fighting these things that we've come to know as boss fights. But you guys already know that, and more importantly, you know why we're talking about them here today, and that's because we are going to be ranking all of the Treyarch boss fights worst to best. Now right away I should mention that we're only going to rank boss fights that actually have a boss, meaning we're not counting like Shadows of Evil, D Machina, Revelation, stuff like that, because there's not really a boss fight there. Also, I kind of encourage you guys to play along during this video, you know, leave your own list down in the comment section or tell me exactly why I'm so right about this list, and maybe drop a like and subscribe there too. Regardless though, let's not waste any more time and jump right into the Treyarch Zombies boss fights ranked from worst to best. Number 14, the Tokyo boss fight from Zetsubo no Shima. And if there's a boss fight out there that gets the idea of what a boss fight should be and then just drops it outside of a 3-story window, it's this one. Because what's going on here? I mean, the boss only has one attack and all it does is hit the middle of the boss fight arena, and like you're never there 99% of the time, so that's just not hitting you. On top of that, I don't even think that's a one-hit kill, so what even? And then how to damage him is just like based off a timer, and all it is just wait a little bit, he'll open the spore, you shoot it, and then you just wait a little bit, shoot another spore. Like, that is just such bad design on every imaginable level. Number 13, the Avogadro boss fight from Alpha Omega. So this boss fight forgets what one of those two words means. Like, it has the boss, like he's there, but there ain't much fighting going on. Because first off, you're just filling up soul boxes with an immortal Avogadro that you really can't do anything to damage. But then of course you make him vulnerable, which is cool by itself, but you know, but then when you make him vulnerable, like he really isn't even a challenge at that point. All you do is pull out your special weapon and easily throw him into the APD. So I really struggle to find where the fighting happens in this boss fight. Number 12, the Echo boss fight from Shinonuma. Now the problem with this one is obvious because the boss is just one of the mini bosses from the map, except slightly stronger. I will give it credit, it does have different phases and there's a specific way to make the boss vulnerable, but you know, that's really all the nice things I could say about it. Number 11, the Orda boss fight from Firebase Z. Now, oh my gosh, if there's a boss fight you could just straight up cheese. Like, if you have yourself a Ring of Fire and a double packed gun, or God forbid, a triple packed gun, oh my gosh, it's already done. You're done within seconds, and I do not kid you when I say that, seconds. And what makes it even funnier though is that there's literally a better version of this exact same boss fight on both Outbreak and on the exact same map, except just on round 30. Number 10, the Werewolf boss fight from Dead of the Night. So this boss fight I think has one of the coolest ideas of a boss fight, but fails to execute on literally anything else. But what that idea is that I love the idea of fighting an invisible boss, and the only way to really find him then damage him is to set a trap and then lure him into that trap. Now he becomes visible and vulnerable and you now could damage him, and that idea is so freaking cool to me. But unfortunately, I just don't think this boss fight does anything else that's good besides that. Number 9, the Elephant boss fight from the map 9. Now the first thing I should address is that no, I did not put this boss fight at 9 just because it takes place on the map 9. Totally didn't do that at all. So if that's the case, why did I put it here? Well, to me, I think that it's because this boss fight just makes me sad because it sounds so cool, dude. Like, fighting an elephant zombie boss, like, that sounds so freaking cool. But when you get there, like, he's just a bullet sponge and he really doesn't have that many unique attacks. I think he's a slam attack and a charge attack, which, I mean, makes sense for an elephant, but it just could have been better. You could have added cooler attacks that were something that you could actually die to, because you're really not going to die to those attacks unless you're really not paying attention. But on top of that, I feel like just make a unique way to hurt him. Don't just make him a bullet sponge. Like, stuff like that would have been so much cooler, but unfortunately they didn't do that. Number 8, the Forsaken boss fight from the map Forsaken. Now, if the elephant boss fight made me sad, this boss fight makes me depressed, because this boss fight had everything it needed to be the greatest boss fight of all time. It had different phases and how the boss fight would change throughout those different phases. It had a really cool looking boss, like the Forsaken just standing there being all big and everything. That looks really, really cool. And then on top of that, the boss has different attacks, like multiple different attacks. The icy one, the electric one, the beam attack, like all this stuff is really cool. And what makes it even better on top of that is that there's a really cool and unique way to actually damage him. After you break his shield, then you get these giant rail guns that you can just beam him with. But it all falls apart when you realize that these attacks that it has are so freaking weak. Like legit, I don't think it's possible to go down to its attacks, which just sucks so bad, because like it's so cool in every other way, but when it's so easy it's just cheesy. I really can't put it any higher on the list. Number 7, the Eye of Odin boss fight from Voyage of Despair. So this is definitely the most difficult boss fight that we've ever got in Zombies, but the reason that I can't really put it any higher is because I really don't feel like the reason it's difficult is because of the boss, but really because it throws you in very claustrophobic areas. Like some of the areas are just so tiny that you're really going to die to the zombies over the boss, which isn't really the greatest thing in the world. Don't get me wrong, I do like the different phases of the boss fight. I do like the final phase that if you don't deal enough damage to the boss, he's then going to do wipe attack and kill everybody. I love stuff like that, but really I just felt like it could have been better. It's still fun, don't get me wrong though. Number 6, the Legion boss fight from Outbreak. Now originally when I made this list, this boss fight was higher, but then I started to think about, well, what is it that I like about this boss fight besides the challenge? And don't get me wrong, I love the challenge of this boss fight. I love fighting difficult bosses. But the problem is with this boss fight is that I realized you're not really fighting the boss in this, because Legion doesn't really have any attacks. All he does is just close off some areas and make them deadly, which is really easy to avoid, so I don't really know. And really what you're doing here is just dealing with the zombies and then shooting Legion. And sure, that's a challenge, but I don't think that's great in terms of boss fights. Number 5, the Valentina boss fight from Mauer der Toten. Now this boss fight is really cool. I love a lot of the unique things that Valentina does. Her constantly regenerating shield is cool. Her healing ability is really cool because, you know, not only is it just a healing ability, but on top of that, there is a way to counter it, and it's just by killing the zombies before she sucks the soul out of them. But on top of that, I like her attack. She has an attack that's specifically made just to melt your armor, and also she has a wipe attack. All really, really cool stuff, and overall really solid boss fight. And if I really have to nitpick at a couple things, maybe I could say that I felt like the phasing could have been done better, and also it could have looked a bit cooler, but besides that, really solid all around. Number 4, the Dragon / Nikolai boss fight from Gorod Krovi. Now at one point, I considered this the greatest boss fight we've ever got. But as time has gone on, people realize you can absolutely cheese this boss fight, specifically the Nikolai side of it. If you pop in plain sight, or even worse, idolize, he just stands there, takes it, and he instantly dies. Like, it's not even a challenge, which really sucks. And I know some people will say if you think it's cheese, then, you know, don't do it then. And first things first, no. And second things second, don't care. But regardless, I can say this boss looks really cool, and the dragon side of this boss fight is really cool because it gives you a giant area to play with, but then there's a counter to that because the dragon can light the whole place on fire. And that is stuff I absolutely love in Zombies, and even with the cheese, it's still a really solid boss fight. Number 3, the Cortifex boss fight from the Archon. And I know releasing this video so close to the release of this map is probably not good because a lot of people feel real negative about it, but trust me guys, this boss fight is so solid. Like, it first off looks really cool, and second off, Cortifex has a lot of cool abilities and attacks, and also the phasing of this boss fight is really cool. I mean, just think about those. He has multiple really powerful attacks through his orb, and then also little electric things on the floor, which throughout the boss fight actually deal more and more armor, and then throughout the different phases, he gets new abilities. Within the second phase, he gets a shield, and the third phase, he gets a healing ability. Like, all that is done really well. And if I really had criticisms for it, it would be that it is cringe how you actually break his shield. Sometimes he doesn't activate his healing ability, and also damaging him just by shooting the eye could have been a little bit cooler, but besides that, really solid. Number 2, the Keeper boss fight from the Reisendrache. And yes, the OG boss fight still plays well till this day. And I mean, what can I say about it? Everyone knows how cool it is. I mean, it looks cool. Also, the fact that you're fighting against your own abilities, like the bows you've been using all game, now they're turned against you through the abilities. Also, the way you make him vulnerable by when he's about to do his most powerful wipe attack, you drop some DGs under him and now he hurt himself and he makes himself vulnerable. Stuff like that is really, really cool. Like, it's just cool on every level. Sure, the panzers could be annoying, especially if you're playing co-op, because panzers start spawning on the final phases of the boss fights while you're trying to fight the keeper, which is incredibly annoying, but overall, just an incredibly solid boss fight. Number 1, the Pegasus / Perseus boss fight from Ancient Evil. And this boss fight is just great. I mean, what could I say about this? Like, the phasing is done so well. I mean, initially you have 3 different islands to work with, but every time you complete a phase, you lose 1 island, then it brings you to the final phase, and at that point, you're no longer fighting Pegasus. Now you have to fight Perseus. And Perseus has an entirely new set of attacks that you now have to get used to out of nowhere, and it's just really, really cool. I love stuff like this. I love the attacks from Perseus, and if I really had to give any criticism to this, is that Pegasus could have had more attacks, but really besides that, this boss fight nails nearly everything.